Alrighty, so today we are going to do the season preview of the defending Eastern Conference champion, that is the Philadelphia Union. And I know that is probably the best way I can at least give credit to what the Union did last season, which was a great season. But obviously, I'm pretty sure every Union fans are still thinking about that MLS Cup. I mean, I know it's been a couple of months since that MLS Cup has been passed, but just the way that they lost that MLS Cup, I don't think there's any team that have came that late in terms of getting their hands the MLS Cup only for it to slip away, like the fashion that the Union did in that MLS Cup, and that I truly believe that is probably the most heartbreaking way to lose an MLS Cup. But that being said, this upcoming season, there is no doubt that this team is once again thinking at this as kind of a redemption toward, and that once again they're going to be aiming for the MLS Cup. And judging by the fact that they have been improving at least for the last two seasons, with the way that in 2021 they reached the Eastern Conference Final, and then last year they reached the MLS Cup, if that pattern kind of continue, maybe this might be the year where they can win MLS Cup, and especially with the way that they kind of running it back and having pretty much the same team that lost that heartbreaking MLS Cup against LAFC, and looking to trying to climb the mountain again and trying to win that elusive trophy that's missing in their trophy cabinet. There could be a chance that this team is going to be that team that's going to be favorites of winning MLS Cup. And not to mention, they also might even think about pushing for CCL2, because don't forget, this is also a team that is involved in the CONCACAF Champions League. Now, last season they finished with a 19-10-5 record and finished with 67 points. That was actually tied with LAFC in terms of the amount of points and the most that any team has had last season in MLS. The problem is they only had 19 wins. LAFC had 21 wins, and that was basically the tiebreaker in terms of wins. But as many Union fans will say, yeah, that's not really the most heartbreaking part of last season. The most heartbreaking part of last season is that MLS Cup loss against LAFC. But prior to that, they did finish second with a 14-2-8 record, or 14-12-8 record with 54 points. But they did lose to NYCFC in the Eastern Conference Finals. So the Union for the past two seasons have been losing to team that eventually went on to win MLS Cup. Well, obviously last year it was a pretty obvious thing because they were in the big game itself. But in 2020, they did win the Supporter Shield and finally won their first silverware in their team history with a 14-5-4 record and finished with 47 points. But unfortunately, they got a taste of the Supporter Shield curse of them losing in the first round to the New England Revolution. But prior to that, they finished third with a 16-7-11 record and finished with 55 points. But they did lose to Atlanta United in the second round. And then in 2018, this is really where we started to begin, where the Union really started to become a machine in the Eastern Conference. I mean, I think when you look at the past decade, there is no team in the Eastern Conference that has been very consistent in terms of performing at a higher rate than what we've seen from the Philadelphia Union. But it all started in 2018 with them finishing in 6th place with 15-5-14 record and finished with 50 points, and they did lose to NYCFC in the first round. Now, in terms of some of the addition, again, they didn't really make some big acquisition that we've seen maybe some Eastern Conference team and maybe some of their MLS Cup contender rival might be making, but they definitely add some more depth in terms of the team. One of the depth pieces that they got was from Orlando City by bringing Andres Pereira. Then they of course get Montreal number 10 in Joaquin Torres. Well, not really a number 10, but more kind of like just a backup number 10 for this Montreal side, or I would say more like a hybrid number 10 during his time with Montreal. They also got Damian Lowe from Inter Miami, and then I forgot to put the name Draft next to Holden Tran name. Yes, the Philadelphia Union actually decided to pick up a player in the Super Draft. I mean, that feels like it's like once in a blue moon kind of thing, because the Union have always not only participate in the Super Draft, but they're kind of like the LA Rams, where they said F those picks, and that they would rather develop throughout their academy rather than basically go to the Super Draft and pick up some hidden diamonds in that part. But in this year, this was really the first time I think in really for the past couple of seasons. I mean, I don't remember the last time the Union actually picked up a guy from the Super Draft, but Holden Trent is one of the players that they signed from the Super Draft pick that they picked back a couple of months ago. Now, in terms of players that no longer with this team, Paxton Aaronson, of course, sold to Frankfurt. We kind of knew that from last season after he signed a pre-contract with Eintracht Frankfurt. Matt Fries going to NYCFC, and again, this was not a big surprise considering the fact that, pretty sure Matt Fries, he's probably tired of sitting behind the number 2 spot behind Andre Blake, and knowing the fact that he has some potential to be a decent goalkeeper. You just had a feeling he might need to think about moving to another team, and NYCFC, I feel like, from what I said in the season preview about them, it's a perfect team for him to join. So, yeah, he, of course, moved to NYCFC. Their other goalkeeper, Ben Martino, not really well known, but he has moved on to Nashville SC. And then they also lost Corey Burke, who decided to go to the New York Red Bulls. And I think this is a big loss for them, because I know Corey Burke is more of a guy that usually come off the bench and kind of be that physical co-present in terms of really putting more salt to the gaping wounds that these defender has been suffering after the Union like 4 or 5-0 up. But I feel like there was time where he's been able to come off the bench and kind of almost become like that Elzinho role that we've seen before, a guy that can come off the bench and be that impact kind of player. Now, that being said, I will say that speaking of Elzinho, and since we're talking about the Philadelphia Union, we gotta, of course, mention the greatest super sub in league history in Elzinho. I would say that Joaquin Torres could be that player that could be the super sub player, and could be a player that can come off the bench and can really unbalance of what already is a tired defense, because we know that Joaquin Torres can do that, especially during his time with Montreal. But again, losing Corey Burke is going to be a little bit of a tough pill to swallow, and they're really hoping that the next player in line, in Chris Donovan, another guy that came out of the Union Academy, that they're highly rating that he's going to be decent. They're hoping that he can have the similar impact that Corey Burke had when he really was a guy that just, again, it's amazing how every time when he come off the bench, when the Union isn't in a process of blowing out teams, that he just make things even worse for opposition. And that just shows you why this Union team, they just show no mercy game after game. Like, they don't care if they about sportsmanship and stuff. They'll run up the score, and they'll even bring in a physical presence to do so, to run up the score. They also lost Cole Turner and Abbas Ahmed, as some of the players that they lost in this offseason. But in terms of the strength of this team, I mean, it's pretty much everything. Again, at the time of this recording, I still think that this team is still the best team in the Eastern Conference. And I know I might have maybe said that about Orlando City in my last season preview, and I also mentioned with Orlando City, it's pretty much everything. But I kind of mean it more for the Union, if you know what I mean by that. The fact that I really can't find a point of this team where it is an absolute strength. I mean, if I had to, I would say it's got to be the attack, because look what we saw with the attack last season, especially in the second half of the season. That attack was just, it was probably the scariest attack we have ever seen in league history. The amount of goals that they were scoring at Wirral in that front three with Gastek, Uru, and Carenza, that was probably the best front three we have ever seen during that span in the second half of the season, especially during that month of August when they were scoring like 7 or 6 goals. Like it's everyday's business. But in terms of the weakness of this team, I would say it's got to be the back line and midfield depth. I mean, as much as, yes, they have a very good midfield and very good back line, I mean, they just have probably one of the best number 6 that's not named Diego Chara and Jose Martinez in this team. And then in the back line, I mean, they also have the defensive player of the year in Jacob Glesnes still anchoring the back line for this team. And not to mention Ali Bador also making another run this season, though, there's a question that we'll see whether or not if Bador maybe have 1 or 2 years left before he hangs it up, because, he is kind of getting up to that age, but he's also a guy that has been key in terms of providing leadership to this team. But Yeah, besides that, as I said, with the weakness, there is definitely question in terms of the back line and midfield depth. They don't really have a lot of depth in terms of the back line, and the same goes with the midfield. And that could be problematic if they do decided to venture in multiple competition. Because like I said, with this Union team, it's not just about MLS Cup that they want to win. They also are a little bit serious about CCL. And not to mention, the last time they were in CCL, they actually gone the furthest out of any team during that season back in 2019 when they went all the way to the semifinal and unfortunately fall to Club America. Or actually, is it? It's not 2018. I meant 2019 was the season when they gone the furthest out of any team, but they did fall in the semifinal. Now, the free big question for this team. Well, there isn't really a lot of big question about this team other than the fact that is this finally the year for them to win MLS Cup? And I know that sounds very generic, but again, when you look at this team, it is loaded for an MLS Cup run. Like I still think, as I said many times before, this is still the team to beat in the Eastern Conference, and that this team is still head and shoulder above everyone else in the Eastern Conference. Maybe FC Cincinnati might be a team that I can think of, or even Orlando City if all the pieces hit well. Could be a team that can challenge the Philadelphia Union, but as of now, as before the season began, I would say the Union clearly have the best quality out of any team right now in the Eastern Conference, and that they definitely want to not only make a run again to win multiple trophy, but they want to go back to MLS Cup and try to redeem themselves after just, as I said, probably the most heartbreaking loss I've ever seen a team suffer in an MLS Cup. But in the second big question, how much will the Union get in terms of selling their best young asset in the summer? So, the good thing about this Union team is that not only the fact that they've been competitive for the past couple of seasons, but they've been able to be competitive despite the fact that they have sold some young asset and some players coming out of the academy to big amount of money, and we start to see that not only in terms of them getting some of those assets, but also some of those players have now been on the U.S. men's national team. I mean, there's a guy named Brandon Aronson ring a bell to you, the fact that, yeah, he used to play for the Union, and they sold him off for a big profit, and now he's a regular for the U.S. men's national team. So, yeah, this is a team that, it's remarkable the fact that they've been able to do that, because we've seen before when teams decide to sell some of their best talented player, they suffer a bit of a regress. Not this team. This team, they do sell some big well-known player, they will always find a way to replace him, and that this is also why we talk about the Union Academy, probably the best academy right now in MLS. And I know FC Dallas fans are probably triggered when I said that and about their academy, but I think in terms of just producing some good talent on the field and able to sell them and able to replace them, right now the Union Academy is definitely right up there as the best out of any academy so far in MLS. So again, I think there's definitely going to be some big young asset that they're going to be sell either in the summer and in the next winter. I mean, this off season, it's kind of surprised they didn't really sold anybody big in terms of for a big amount of profit. Yes, they of course sold Paxton Aronson, but that deal was agreed back in last summer, so that didn't count. And a lot of people thought that both fullbacks Kai Wagner, Olivier Bizo, or even Leon Flock was going to be sold off this off season for a big amount of money, but that didn't happen. I mean, they're still around and probably around for one more year for them to make one last big push to trying to win MLS Cup. And then of course the third big question of this team: can they still do well in the league if they do push for CCL? So one of the oddity of the Philadelphia Union is that for many years I've been talking about how when you of course are in CCL and in MLS, you can really only choose one competition to do well, because you're probably gonna fall off the mountain in the other competition. But we saw in 2019 that was an outlier where the Union were the one that got the deepest out of any team, and yet still in 2019 they were able to they were able to do well in the league and able to get themselves in the latter part of the season to climb from what at one point they were like a ninth in the Eastern Conference, but somehow find a way to finish third in the standings and still have a good season. So who say that the Union can do it again this time, where they might be one of the few teams that they can actually push in terms of both competition. And again, history says that that's not possible, but this team has defied that logic, at least for that season, and it'll be interesting to see whether they can do it again. Because again, as much as MLS Cup is definitely the big goal and something that they want to win, they definitely want to also think about CCL, and also want to join the likes of the Seattle Sounders, becoming the second MLS team to win the CONCACAF Champions League. And then the bonus question of this team: how many trophy will this team win this season? I would say at least one. I think if they don't at least win one trophy this season, it's gonna consider a failure. And when you look at the trophy that they're gunning for, I mean, in terms of MLS Cup, they're one of the favorites. In terms of CCL, I would say that them alongside of LAFC definitely considered to be the favorites of winning the CONCACAF Champions League. Maybe Orlando City, if Orlando City somehow able to get it together with some of the new signings and able to get past the ultimate CCL gauntlet of beating Tigres in those two-legged affair. But yeah, they could be favorites in terms of winning that. The League Cup, we'll see whether or not if Jim Curtin will look into that competition and think that they're going to push for that. And even the U.S. Open Cup too. I mean, the Union has been to multiple U.S. Open Cup final, but unfortunately they have lost pretty much all of those U.S. Open Cup finals. So that could be a trophy that they could be gutting off. So the bottom line is, I think this team is definitely going to be good in terms of competing in multiple competition, and that. Oh, I didn't even mention about the Supporters Shield. This team could also compete once again for the Supporters Shield too. So yeah, there could be multiple trophies that this team can definitely get, and I won't be surprised they might win not just one trophy, but maybe 2 or 3 trophies throughout this season because of how good this team is. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this preview? And if you're a Union fan, what do you think is the strength, the weakness, and 3 big question facing this team, besides the fact that they're looking to gun to trying to win MLS Cup and redeem what they had last season. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.